Hey everybody, my name is Suk, and I want to talk a little bit more about this neck. I had a lot of interest around this, and I want to just kind of go through a couple of things about it. First of all, the main thing about this is it's 6 pianos, right? That's why I want to sit here today. It's 6 pianos on the guitar, and that's part of what I want to look at, part of the benefit of what this is. What we're looking at is the key of C and the key of E flat. And I want to just remind people that this is all 12 notes, just as the piano is. This is not limited to a key. This is all keys. This is everything you've ever heard has been within the 12 notes, I'm talking of the Western world, of our music system. So we have to definitely look past that it's just the way we see the notes like a piano player does. The other part of this is I want to show how the guitar lives on the piano, the redundancy, and why it's 6 individual pianos staggered that create our fretboard, and that's why we can kind of jump big spaces this way. So the first thing, let's take a look at how the guitar and the piano translate. Over here on the piano, I want to show you our strings. It's really nice to find out what your open strings are. So our lowest note is E. And that is this E here. Right? We go to the next octave. I could say the second fret of my D string. The next octave of E, the high note. And the high octave, that's the 12th fret. And then one more, I would get up to this D on my 22nd fret guitar. That's the highest note on most guitars. That's where that is. And just to remind you what we're looking at here, right? We had the 5 black keys of the piano. There's D flat and E flat, and then there's the 3 G flat, A flat, and B flat. I mentioned before that they're relative, so the E flat is the minor. Very easy to see and hear the job that a pentatonic has. You can see where the spacings are. And then the C we know is major. So from C here, you can see the 2 natural half steps of B to C and E to F and B to C. And it's the 7 white notes, 5 black keys. That's all 12 notes of our music system. This doesn't mean the piano can only play in the key of C or E flat. It does if you just want to stay only on the white keys or only on the black keys. It's the same on the guitar with this neck. This is the 12 notes of our music system. The 5 black notes make up a pentatonic scale. On the guitar, we can see that as the 5 patterns we normally look at, again, in the key of E flat or G flat. I call this by my rock and roll rule. You can see pattern 2, pattern 3, pattern 4 of the pentatonics, pattern 5 of the pentatonics, and again, pattern 1. You can see all of them laid out there. Piano doesn't have patterns. They have 5 notes, and you play them by octave. And that's why when you look at a piano, you can so easily see the 2 and the 3 black keys, the 2 and the 3 black keys, the 2 and the 3 black. It's very easy to navigate the black keys on there. What happens is you're using all the keys for all the keys in music. You'll end up using an F sharp for the key of G, for example. So we integrate those as we go. What does that mean for us on the guitar? Ideally, you want to think about this as one string. When I learned the notes, it's really important to learn them by string, because that's the easy way, because they're always in the same order. And here's my first tip. When you learn this G from your G chord, there's that G on that first dot. The first 3 dots, the dots are just there for visual reference so you don't lose track of where you are. That's all that they're there for. The first 3 dots, or at least the 3, 5th, and 7th frets, are gab. That was the first thing I learned past my open strings was G-A-B. Now I learned it because when I was 12 years old, I was in the kitchen. My mom was in the kitchen on the phone gabbing to her friend. I had a guitar book. I had just gotten my guitar and I noticed that. I was like, oh, gab. That stuck. There's a lot of people out there who know gab. Give me a shout out if you know gab. Been one of my students. So those 3 notes, musically, those are the whole steps, right? So for on G, A, and B, if I can find those, I always get a 3-for-1 deal. This is the thing about notes. You learn a relationship. So if I find any G on my instrument, I always know A and B are 2 whole steps above it. I know that musically, B to C is a half step. So I could just do that just from simple music knowledge and not even think of black dot fingering stuff on guitar, patterns, keys. That can get a lot of really derailed stuff in the guitar world. Learning the notes really does make it easier. So what I'd ask of you is string a day challenge. Learn a string a day. There's only 12 notes. They're always in the same order, and you just have to remember what they start on. And this is why I said earlier, 6 strings on the piano. 6 strings of the guitar is 6 pianos, excuse me. So each string is like a cross set of this. So let's check this for a second. If I go over to the piano, you can see that our low E, if we went up to the 12th fret, would go there. If I go up from this low E, I get to that A. Now that A is the 5th fret and the start of my open string. So now on the guitar, there's 2 of those. Only 1 on the piano, that's it. And if I keep going, I hit a D note. That's the start of my D string. Now that note is already still on the E string and obviously part of the A string. So now I see that D note up here on the 10th fret of my guitar. It's on the 5th fret of my A string, and it's also now the open D. But it's still just 1 note on piano. You keep going, then there's the G string. Now that G, you can also kind of remember this on the guitars. They're almost every 5th fret because we tune in fourths. 5th fret on the D string is that G, the same G on the 10th fret of the A string, and now on the 15th fret of our E is the same G. That 15th fret of your E string, that G note, is the same musical note. Sorry. Right, it's that same G. That's really wild on the guitar that we can be this far apart and it's still the same note. That's a wild thing. You have to come to grips with visually on the guitar. Now, if we keep going, there's, we had the B string, sorry, and the E string. You can see how the notes overlap so much. So if I look from this E to E is the E string, this is the A string, the D string, the G string, the B string, and the E string. So what I'm doing here is the open and 12th fret on the guitar. Let's also talk about the middle C's. Now this was a lot of confusion to me for years because when I've read this, the middle C, the first ledger line below the staff, was here. Now I didn't realize till I went to college that the guitar transposes an octave. We read it an octave off. So when actual middle C is the top of your old school C chord. There's middle C. We have one here, a second one, a third one, a fourth one, and a fifth one. Those are all, they call them C4. Middle C is explosive, man. Middle C is C4 in the music world. And then there's only 1 of them on the piano, and 5 of them. And you can tell what that is called the timbre, the tone of the note. The short, thick strings resonate different than a long, thin one. This is what our ear does to help decipher what instruments we're listening to and stuff. And on the guitar, that can help too. We use that creatively as well. Another thing we're talking about is with like capos and alternate tunings and stuff. Now, if you're thinking by the string, nothing really changes. The string is just moving places. So if you go to drop D, now you're going on a D note instead of an E note. They're all in the same order on the way up. Now, does this change scale positions and chord shapes? Yes, it does. That's a tricky thing. This is a big thing. If you were playing a saxophone on an A-flat instrument and you went to an E-flat instrument, the same finger is going to produce different notes because the notes are in different places. That's a fundamental shift you're doing on the instrument, and it has nothing to do with this. These are the 12 notes in standard tuning and what they look like in our patterns and how they interact. On any single string, it's all the same information. So you could dial that up in any alternate DAD, GAD tunings or open G tunings and see where they all live. But I know most players who do alternate and open tunings, they're thinking positional by that point. It's really hard to keep track of all the moving strings, for sure. But the music world isn't changing. There's 12 notes, you should know them, and on a single string you can always navigate just 12 frets worth of space because it's always the same notes. So I really implore that note literacy as a musician. And then lastly, when you put like capos on, again, the notes don't move. You're just changing the length of the open strings. So if your capo is here, all these notes are still the same. That A note right there is still an A note. Nothing's changed about it. Only the open strings and what chord shapes you can use with that. So there's not a lot going on with that. It's a little hard to keep track of, but it is the notes stay the same with the capo. And lastly, don't go putting stickers on your guitar. Don't put Sharpies on your guitar. That's not the point. The point is to think of the notes. Like I said in the first video, when I wrote these, I knew each individual note. I see every note on the fretboard I have for decades. I just filled them in as I knew them. It was only when I stepped back and looked at it that I saw that pattern. That was so incredible. So it's really important that you just take one string at a time, learn it as you go. Most people are in standard tuning. But you don't need stickers. It's not a visual thing we're trying to look at. It's internal in our head. We want to see that in our mind's eye, right? We don't want to put stickers to just memorize data because it's not how we use it as musicians. All right, well, I hope I cleared up some of the ideas on this. It's a simple idea. It's not going to change. It's not going to sound like anything because it's everything. It's all 12 notes, right? It's all 12 notes of our music system. Once we know how to manipulate them and use them, then we can really start going and making some really cool music. All right, well, I hope you liked what you heard today. Let me know what you think below. My name is Suk Cerullo. You can find everything at sukcerullo.com online. I'd be glad to talk to you. Hit me up on my website, and I will see you guys out there, and keep playing.